This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses. And Zach from Mythos had Julian Lage on their Dipped in Tone podcast, and in this interview he talked about a couple of things that I found really interesting. One was about practicing just plugged straight in DI to a computer and listening in that way, and I thought that was quite kind of revelatory. And then another thing which really made me question a few things was him talking about how he doesn't really transcribe.
I heard that it was good to transcribe, and from teachers that I respect so dearly, and frankly, just on a objective level, hell yeah, transcribe, do it. Like, it's so, it's not up to anybody but you to see if it has a home in your practice. And I understand the logic that states that you want to accumulate certain abilities, you should copy the people who do it. It's not a hard concept to get on board with. But in my experience, there was something about transcribing when I would try it that I think it just drew my attention to parts of the music that weren't that important. So here I was spending hours trying to say, well, how do I write out this kind of triplet-esque thing that so-and-so did? And then, okay, now how do I play and how do I match them? And I'd go through weeks of this kind of stuff. And then at the end go, I don't know if I'm any better,
And I don't think this has always been the case. Based on his talking about it, it sounds like there was a lot of time where he would have been transcribing. And also, having known Julian Lage, his history, like vaguely, as being somewhat of a prodigy like a super young age. I think there's a documentary about this. But basically, he's been playing on stage for his whole life, essentially. One of the things that I kind of wonder about that is whether maybe a lot of the things that some of us maybe are at now came to him a long way early on during his prodigious stages. But instead of saying I disagree or anything like that, because obviously it's Julian Lage, and the fact that it's Julian Lage saying it was what made me think again about like, well, why do we transcribe and all that sort of stuff. But in any case, I think for me, I can see benefits of kind of transcribing licks and stuff like that. So I wanted to talk about that and show you a couple of things. The backing track that I was playing over in the intro, and 3 licks that came from that, I'm going to stick up on Patreon for you guys. But yeah, so I guess first of all the question might be like, what counts as transcription? Because in that he did also talk about traditional kind of listening to music and then writing down like classical music in a condensed score form, which I think is not what most jazz musicians mean about transcription. For me, I think my definition would be something really simple. It doesn't need to be written down. I know traditionally that's what transcribe would mean, but I think it's the idea, and Bob Reynolds I think has talked about this a bit as well, of hearing something and taking it down onto your instrument. Now, whatever that process might be. And I think where you can see this at play and working really well is in kind of improvisational conversations between like B.B. King and Gary Moore. There's like a clip where B.B. King is playing something, Gary Moore repeats it back to him. That to me is about like the simplest form, and also the purest form of like transcription, right? And I think that for me is also what I'm practicing in some ways when I do this sort of stuff. The idea is that I've seen something that I would like to play or heard something that I would like to play, and the process of transcribing is literally me breaking apart what that thing is and figuring out how I can play it on an instrument for myself. Your own definitions for transcription may vary. Also, for me, sometimes it might be that someone on Patreon has asked, like, what were you doing for this specific timestamp here? What was that lick about? What chords were you playing here? And in that case, it's transcription, where probably most of the time I'm improvising the stuff, and they go, well, what was that? And I can try and help to illuminate what I was doing. So hopefully that helps in some small way. But that's transcription for me, right? Where I'm looking at a moment that I had that I'm not going to remember, and I'm looking at it and kind of figuring out what I was doing in the lick, and yeah, figuring out things in that way. That's also transcription, right? For me as well, I think just transcription it's a way, for me, what I use it as is a way of hearing things that I can't yet do and trying to get them into my sort of wheelhouse of playing. In that video, Julian did talk about being like a bad mimic, and for me these days, like learning a whole solo note for note is not something that I would do, but transcribing licks like a lick at a time and taking a lick can be a really good vehicle for practice. So I think that for me is still why transcribing licks is really beneficial. Learning licks, and I think it just helps to keep the wheels turning a bit. It can help you try and figure out new technique stuff. I've done similar things where I look at someone like Jack Gardner. In the past, it could have been whoever, but anytime I've done this sort of thing, the deeper you can go with kind of one lick, there really is benefit to this stuff, I find anyway. And I could think as well, for instance, if it's like a concept that's new to you, like the altered scale and stuff like that, things that actually stuck with that, I think, and learning licks and that sort of stuff can really help to illuminate ideas that kind of just exist on paper, or maybe just exist in scale form, and you don't really know how to make sense of them. Like the licks and transcribing and stuff is more about, how someone else managed to create a piece of music out of the same kind of building blocks that we can all see on the paper. But yeah, whether it's someone like Guthrie Govan or George Benson or someone like that, somehow those guys get a bit more music out of the same amount of dots, or even Julian Lage, right? And it's kind of about transcribing, is about trying to get some of that more musical stuff into our playing, for me at least, right? Or not musical, but things that I have pricked my ears up to some extent. But I guess the fact that Julian said that as well kind of made me think, well, there is definitely something else worth exploring other than just, purely transcribing and licks and stuff like that. And if you're someone who doesn't get on with it at all, I think that's also fine, right? How I know that some of this has worked and is beneficial for me is that I can see concepts that I've broken down sort of creep into my improvisation, and the only way I assume that these have got in there is that I literally sat down and transcribed, for example, for this particular lick, someone like Pierre Donnell, and spent enough time with it that I started to absorb something of that concept, even if it's not perfectly him, even if I'm not exactly mimicking, taking something of it, and it becomes part of my playing that wasn't otherwise there. And that's kind of what I want to show you in this video, is how that could start to happen with a specific kind of lick, which I'll stick on Patreon with the backing track. But we're going to start here in D major, and with all concepts it's good to start slowly. I'm going to start here with this 5 7 5 4 5 5 7 9, and then up to the 7th fret there. Okay, and then we jump to our G string. So 6 5 7 5, slide up to 7 7 9 11 10 9 12 10 9. Okay, and on the descent we're going to go kind of in the middle of the 3 note per string type stuff. So we're going to go middle note, so 2 3 1, and that's going to be the pattern. So 10 12 7 9 11 7 9 11 7 9, or 9. It's either 11 or 10, and then 9 12 7. We fall back down to here. And a really good idea with any lick is to kind of learn how to play it in more than one place on more than one string set. So here, what I immediately did was kind of stack this on top of it. 10, 12, 10, 9, 10, 12, 14, 12, 11, 14, 12, 11, 12, 14, 16, 14, then 14, 17, 15, 14, slide up to the 15, 17, 19, double onto the 14, then 17, 19, 14, 17, 19, 15, 18, 19, 16. So that's our kind of major variation of the lick. Okay, and then a good concept with a lot of this stuff is to turn it from major to minor, and in this case it's not too much work. What we're going to need to do is anytime we see a C sharp, drop that to a C. Anytime we see an F sharp, drop that to an F, right? And that will turn it from a D major into D minor. Okay, so you get that start. Okay, and then the repeat. Something like that, right? Works nicely. 17, 10, 20, 15, 17, 18, 15, 17, 19, 14. So that's our minor variant. Whee. Okay, and then the other kind of thing that I've mentioned is that these licks can help us to figure out things that we don't already kind of have properly figured out. So in this example, we've got a D here. We could be using D melodic minor or like C sharp altered. And in this case, what I'm going to need to do is just replace the F sharps with an F. And that bit there is a little bit more complicated. Instead of a C, I want a B. Okay, so you get a lick that would otherwise definitely never occur to me whenever I saw an altered chord or like a C sharp altered, right? That wouldn't be something that, not something that would occur to me obviously. And so that is why I think that transcribing, learning licks, manipulating licks can be a really good thing, because you can turn something that is alien to you, something that you heard that you thought, oh, I like that in my playing, into something that you can fit into your playing. And then beyond that, you might be able to sort of manipulate it so that it becomes something that is even more a part of you, because you can play it in different contexts. So like, instead of just major, what about if it's in then minor? What about instead of just minor or major, is then in a melodic minor kind of. Whichever variation you. Variation you find works. that's what I was doing in the intro there, kind of going between a D to a D melodic minor. I think it's a really useful kind of concept, this transcribing stuff. So for me, it's been really beneficial. That's why I continue to do it. I hope maybe one or two of you guys get something out of it as well. Some of you guys occasionally tell me that the legato stuff has helped you to kind of keep on track with the legato. And the other reason that kind of licks are such a useful thing in this kind of thing is that it is like an achievable, shorter piece of work that we can do like a bite-sized chunk. So it makes it possible if you just have like these littler phrases, and instead of thinking about the whole thing, as I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking about it in those chunks. But I think music is made up of kind of smaller chunks, right? Yeah, so that's kind of my thoughts on transcribing from being very tired right now. But hopefully those are some things that you might fancy taking a look at, working on a little bit. It's just a little lick that I thought sounded pretty cool, manipulated in a few different ways. Cheers for stopping by. Catch you in another video soon.